This video is sponsored by Ground News. Imagine this. 1.4 million EU soldiers. Tens of thousands of tanks. Thousands of planes. A unified European command. 27 national armies gone.
We really have to step up massive the defense expenditure.
A military budget on par with the US.
Que debemos hacer es crear el ejército europeo.
US, China, and Russia, who are they again?
Fuerzas armadas comunitarias, integradas por 27 países.
Europe must be responsible for its own security. This is not longer an option. This is a must.
A European army. Interesting thought, but is this possible? Normally, this is where we'd say, no, not a chance, not anytime soon. But honestly, over the last year, global politics has moved so fast that the impossible of a European army has started to feel a lot more like maybe. I mean, just look at Ukraine, and then Iran, and now Venezuela. And we've now got this weird return to old-school imperial thinking, with Trump openly talking about interfering in Mexico, Cuba, Colombia, and for Europe, the most worrying of all, Greenland. Which, yeah, kind of does belong to Denmark. So with all of this happening, it's not surprising that more and more politicians are suddenly saying the quiet part out loud. Is it time for a European army? Take Kubilius, the EU's defense commissioner. He's now openly talking about creating a 100,000 strong European force under European control. Now, this is obviously a pretty bold statement, and left-wing outlets and right-wing outlets covered it in completely different ways. And surprise, surprise, everyone has their own bias. And that's exactly why Ground News is so useful. Because with Ground News, you can instantly compare how different outlets frame the exact same story. For example, the left-leaning coverage is mostly supportive, talking about strategic autonomy and the urgency of acting fast. Meanwhile, the right-leaning outlets are way more skeptical, using language like fantasy and basically saying an EU army just simply won't happen. And if you scroll down a bit further, you can see all the articles neatly split up. And you can click into each one to dive deeper and read the individual reporting. And that's why I love Ground News. It collects reporting from all across the spectrum and puts it all into one place, so you don't get stuck inside just one narrative. It also shows you who owns each outlet, their political leaning, and their factuality rating. And it even gives you an overview of how the story is being covered overall, across the entire continent. So if you want to try it yourself, you can get a 40% off the Vantage plan using the link in the description or just scan the QR code on the screen right now. Back to the video. Now, this isn't the first time we talked about a European army. Our part 1, released almost a year ago now, went into the details of how an EU army could actually work in practice. We looked at recruitment, the command structure, and who would actually lead it. And finally, we looked at integration. Because a European army wouldn't replace national armies overnight. That simply won't be possible. And our conclusion was basically that this would happen at 3 different levels. At level 1, countries participate financially and allow the EU to recruit soldiers from their populations. At level 2, countries start merging parts of their national forces into the EU force, kind of how the Netherlands already integrates parts of its military with Germany today. And then, at level 3, the full commitment option, where a country allocates almost its entire national army to the EU force. Alright, that was a super quick recap, and if you want the full breakdown, go and watch part 1. It's linked right above. Because in this video, we're focusing on something a bit different. What has happened since then? So, let's have a look at our timeline since our last video, as some really important things have happened. And the first one was Pedro Sánchez. Spain's prime minister came out and said this, and I'm quoting here. It is time to create a European army, EU armed forces with troops from all 27 member countries under one single flag. The only way that we become a true union. Now, a quick interlude here, because that was a massive statement by Sánchez, which I really liked. And honestly, it was so bold, and I wish more politicians were able to take such clear positions. Second, the Netherlands, because the Dutch elections brought in a big signal too. D66. And in their manifesto, they literally write, "We're working towards a European armed forces." And Rob Jetten has also been very open about higher defense spending with the media and shows a lot of willingness to think European and not just national. And third, things are really starting to pick up steam inside the EU itself. The EU Defense Commissioner, Kubilius, has openly called for a standing military force of 100,000 troops. At a security conference in Sweden this past Sunday, he asked the audience, would the US be stronger if they had 50 separate state armies instead of one federal force? Or 50 different defense budgets instead of one? I mean, the answer here is pretty obvious. And let's have a look at the numbers. If you were to add up all EU member states' defense spending in 2025, you get roughly $446 billion. That would make Europe the second biggest defense spender on Earth, by a long way. Only the US would be ahead. So Europe's problem here isn't the money, it's that we're spending it separately in 27 different directions, which, is just inefficient. And Kubilius isn't stopping at troops. He's also pushing for a European Security Council. The idea is a smaller group, around 10 to 12 members, including the UK, with permanent seats for the big players, and a few rotating ones, and also, of course, EU leadership at the table. It is basically a setup that can make fast decisions when things get serious. And honestly, we might already be seeing a beta version of this through the Coalition of the Willing. 34 countries without the US, starting to coordinate more like a single bloc. For example, last week the UK and France backed the idea of sending troops to Ukraine if a peace deal is reached. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, Greenland, where there's talk of using European deterrence to protect the island from US expansionism. One idea is activating the EU's 5,000-strong rapid deployment capacity and stationing it there. Now, of course, none of this is a European army just yet, but these are definitely the kind of small signals that could point in the right direction. So, let's have a look at what Europe's biggest political voices are actually saying, and where they stand on a European army. First, we have Macron. And a few years ago, he was the loudest voice in the room calling for a European army. But lately, he's gone pretty quiet. Still though, since it was basically his idea to begin with, we'll keep France in the green for now. Then there's Poland.
Zobaczcie, jak to brzmi. 500 milionów Europejczyków prosi 300 milionów Amerykanów, żeby oni ich obronili przed 140 milionami Rosjan. Chcę się powtórzyć tylko te słowa. Umiesz liczyć, to licz na siebie, zacznij liczyć na siebie. Nie w odosobnieniu, ale z pełną świadomością własnego potencjału. Europa, jeśli czegoś dzisiaj nam brakuje, to przecież nie przewagi gospodarczej czy ludnościowej, tylko wiary w to, że jesteśmy naprawdę globalną potęgą.
My God, I really love that clip. I mean, how right is he? It really sums up our European situation. Now, Tusk has definitely hinted towards an EU army, but Nawrocki, the president, definitely has not. And because of that unclarity, we're marking Poland in orange. Then there's Italy. Giorgia Meloni has been very clear that she won't support a European army if it just duplicates or competes with NATO. She wants a European pillar inside of the alliance, not a replacement for it. So for a standalone EU army, Italy is likely in red. And then there's Hungary. And there's no surprises here. Orban has been consistently against the idea of handing over that kind of power to the EU. They're firmly red. And finally, we have the big one, Germany. When Friedrich Merz became chancellor, many expected a big pro-European push. But in a recent interview, he was very blunt and said that European integration has its limits. He argues for more cooperation between the countries instead of integration, meaning that Germany is more of a red too. Now, obviously, that's only a handful of the European leaders. So let us know in the comments, what's the vibe in your country? Are they pushing for a unified force or clinging on to national sovereignty? Here's what I think. I just wish that more leaders had the courage to actually lead on this. Because right now it's basically only Sánchez and one commissioner in a commission of 27 leaders. That's simply not enough. And with Macron in his last term as president of France, and Merz already pretty old at 70, it would be great opportunities for both of these leaders to take a more vocal voice on this. Because, to be honest, a European army would fix so many of Europe's problems. Firstly, look at Russia. It could really scare them off, as a European army would actually be able to stand on its own 2 feet and not rely on the US. And that brings me to my second point. It would make us so much less dependent on the US, who, let's be real here, always push around their own interest first. And then we would save so much money, because 27 separate armies, as mentioned before, is simply inefficient. And the funniest part really is that the people in Europe actually want it. Look at these polls. Most countries are publicly supporting a European army. Even the ones against it are only polling 60% against instead of the 40% for. So, Merz, Macron, Meloni, I know you're watching. Be a little bolder, please. And just to be very, very clear, I'm really not saying that we need to replace national armies here. This is an addition to national armies. Just imagine if every country put just 1% of their GDP into a shared European force. That would be insane. We would be one of the strongest military powers of the world. Anyway, if you want a full breakdown of how this could actually work, we did a whole part 1 on this. So click on the video now linked above on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to dig deeper into media bias and understand how stories are being framed, check out our sponsor, Ground News. You can get the Unlimited Access Vantage plan with 40% off by using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen right now. Thank you to all of our presidents: Alexander Christian Peter Clement, Daniel Eupedia Europe, Giuseppe HEVD J. Kikiloxen, Michael Ava Europe, Rashid Shauki Jan Stefan Unite Europe. See you in the next video.